Hi, everybody. Simon Hazeman here, co-founder and head of partnerships and growth here at Hayylo. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Hayylo Insights episode 10 with Caitlyn Burke, Executive Officer, and Michelle Hurford, People and Culture at Mercy Services, a leading care provider across the Hunter region in New South Wales. It's very rare that we see a team across community services take the reins of a project like Mercy Services did when deploying Hayylo to service their communities better. In this insightful and hopefully practical conversation, we explore how better customer service and culture can make operating a home care organisation more cost-effective and a better place to work. I hope you enjoy this session today. Thank you both for joining us. And what I might do is, Caitlyn, get you to kick off for us today and give us a little bit of an overview of Mercy Services and the service that you provide to the community.
The Sisters of Mercy started Mercy Services back in the 70s, and it was a really community-led, about community need, so about really addressing what people need in our community. What we've noticed is it has grown since then in a way that we joke it's not a big fish, we're an unusual fish. You don't find many like us that do the breadth of services that we do. There are a lot of varied community services out there, but we do a lot across a number of different regions. And that's where we've got obviously then competing priorities, lots of different groups of staff who are affected differently by different challenges. And it's endlessly rewarding because there are so many different areas that we can have an impact to. So we do a lot of community transport in some areas. We do, and that's quite a broad area. We've got a residential aged care facility. We also do a significant amount of home and community care. And we also run alcohol and drug programs for those in need, particularly for families with young children. So we have got a really broad number of staff, broad specialties amongst those staff. And we try and address community need wherever we can. So at the moment, we have about 200 staff across that group. And we service anywhere up to about 3,000 clients in any given year.
Yeah, wow. They're really big numbers and quite a bit of complexity there, as you were saying. What I'm really interested to jump into today with you both, because there's some great initiatives that you've shared with me kind of as we led up to this conversation, but just to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of what we're going to dig into and some of that hopefully practical things people can take away. What I love about this sector is just the way that the community shares across different groups and is quite open to really sharing some of these initiatives. But to give the audience a little bit of an understanding of what we're going to be talking through, one of the things I'm really excited to get into with yourself, Michelle, is around why people and culture are the cornerstone of providing the best care possible. We're a people sector. We're a service sector, and really looking at how Mercy Services, are tackling, the staffing shortages through culture and through some of those initiatives. Really wanting to jump into the world prior to Hayylo and having a look at what I think most home care providers are facing across the sector, which are things like manual call-off sheets, manual phone calls, paper letters being sent out to communities, and what you would call inefficient customer service processes. Really what it meant for Hayylo and for Mercy Services and why you kind of came to Hayylo to start looking at solving some of those things. And then really obviously the impact that's had on your team as you look into the future. Because more and more we're finding, and I think over the pandemic in the last few years, communication and what we call care service platforms are having a huge impact. Comm strategies are having a huge impact on the sector, and it's a massive opportunity for providers to alleviate some of that stress that they're dealing with. So a lot to dig into. But Michelle, we might start with yourself. This is the first time we've spoken, so I'm really excited to kind of get into it all. But the past 2 years have been a very challenging time, for the sector. And look, either Michelle or Caitlyn can give us maybe a little bit of an overview of those challenges and the kind of things that you've really been dealing with over the past 2 years. So whoever would like to kick that one off, though.
Michelle, you can say it better than anyone.
Yeah, look, I think there are three areas that we have been mostly impacted, and I wouldn't say that we're alone in this. It's all to do with workforce, and if you break that down further, it's finding the right people, finding people who can work in this field, retaining the wonderful people that we have, and then also when we have people on board, not just the retention, but how do we make people still feel that they've got their resilience and their well-being is intact, and that they can continue to face the challenges that just keep coming at us from all different directions. So they're really just the top three priorities. I guess they're always mine, but they've just been enhanced a lot further in these last 2 years.
Yeah, we're in a very unique position, I believe, as a care service platform, across community services, because we get to speak to just so many different providers, and these stats I would call them anecdotal more than quantitative, in the sense that we're seeing up to 60% turnover of staff on the front line across some groups at the moment, and we're seeing about 40% of executive turnover, and I'd hate to know what that number is at the moment. I don't know any other time over the last 7 or so years that we've been at this where we've seen such an impact to frontline, of course, but the executive teams and also admin teams in the back office, with people just burning out and leaving the sector, and it's just been such a challenging time. So I'd love to kind of start there, how have you guys approached it? What kind of things, because there's not enough staff. They don't seem to be coming anytime soon. We're hoping, obviously, with the upcoming budget allocations from the new government in place, that we're going to see some changes, and there's some announcements around that this week, which is really exciting, around the 24/7 nurse care within residential. But I'm interested to understand a little bit around how you guys are approaching this problem. What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah. I'd like to sort of start by saying our turnover is not too bad, which is really promising. But I've seen a lot more people. We have an ageing workforce, which I think a lot of providers have, because this sector really encourages, promotes, and also brings people in who are of that mature age workforce. So we've probably seen a few more retirements. So it's that end of, I don't know if I can keep going with the way that the world is going. Can I keep doing what I'm doing, or am I better to just sort of go into my retirement? So that's been sad but understanding, I think, in many ways. I think there's a couple of different ways of approaching it. What I love about Mercy Services is we are quite innovative, and no ideas taken off the table. And believe you me, between Caitlyn and I, we've thrown out some pretty hair-raising ideas to see how we can get through certain situations. So speaking with the retirement, having an aging workforce, one of the areas that we did want to look at was attracting younger people into the workforce, just so that we had a broader demographic, not only for the demographic within our organisation, but for the clients as well. I think it's really beneficial if they're meeting people from all different age groups. So we've done our saving grace was a group that we continue to hire called Mercy Helpers, and we went quite targeted into the Uni of Newcastle and Avondale and other different sort of student-based areas to try and attract younger individuals who wanted to build meaningful connections. It was interesting because that was always our goal, but it sparked, I think, a real something for those individuals, because it came about with COVID, where we realised people were being isolated more than they ever had before, even though statistics were already high that there's isolation in older individuals in the community. So we've had a lot of success in bringing in some really amazing young people who are going predominantly into like psychology, occupational therapy, medication sciences, those sort of degrees, who have come in and started to look at how you build and connect with different demographics in the community and the aged care sector. It's been beautiful for a number of reasons. They're ready to step in and do social support, domestic assistance, driving. We've got them on reception. It's kind of, what skill do you have? Oh, how could we use that? Would you like to use that? Yes, excellent. But so that's been phenomenal in itself. But it's been incredible to see these individuals come in with such a passion to give back and care for people. And it gets you back, I guess, to the brass tacks of why we do this. And I think that's something that's really important at the moment, is that we hold on that what we do in aged care is care for people and have a really strong community connection. You mentioned about sort of communication. It's just critical at this time.
Yeah, what I love, the kind of the two elements of that is one that there's a lot of you could nearly call it negativity towards the younger generations that are coming through, and it's really, I think, a testament to these next gens that are coming through, and just the amount of impact and focus they have on community and on caring for the world and for each other, and so that's a beautiful thing that I think is being highlighted more and more initiatives around that can be super impactful. What I did love, which you just shared then, and when I was speaking to Caitlyn earlier about this, is the way that we know with ourselves and in technology and in corporate services, a lot of the time you'll have, say, call it an intern, just for lack of a better term, come in and end up just taking one role, and they do all that grunt work, and they all just sit in the corner and kind of just do the heavy lifting, or I guess you could say. But being able to create an environment, and a lot of the time, I think these things happen because of necessity, or, challenges always create these interesting environments of pressure where you have to think out of the box a little bit. And what it's created is actually a better environment for these younger people to come and learn, and the way they're able to look at these different skills or have experience across such a breadth of different parts of your organisation really shows some kind of positive outputs from the situation that we've been put into. What other kind of things? How else are you approaching the problem? What are the recruitment channels that you use now generally? Is it still just kind of online stuff? Are you looking at trade shows? What kind of things are you doing to attract people?
Oh, I go anywhere and everywhere.
You're at the supermarket handing out pamphlets and flyers. Yeah.
Well, you might need to edit this out, but I've always wanted to get one of those flying things in the street that's just like we're hiring, because I thought that would just be fun. I think I use 12 different channels. I reach out to different job links or job pages on Facebook. We try LinkedIn, not for all roles, but for some roles where it links to the right individuals that use that platform. So they're two of the avenues. Seek and Indeed are your general, and Seek is still a really strong platform to use in identifying. And there's a talent search platform that you can use, so you can start seeking out individuals who are on there, which has started to really take off for me a little bit more recently. But where I think the focus has gravitated to is direct and referrals. So I've been really impressed. I recently did some data, and where we were getting most of our hires was direct or referral. So, I mean, for me, that shows us from that direct standpoint that we've got a reputation out there that people feel that they can come to Mercy. I literally spoke with someone this morning who said that Mercy's just got a reputation for doing things well and doing them efficiently, was actually one of the feedback, which was really lovely to hear. And I get a lot of that. I wish I could share it on a little bit more, but I do hear some really lovely things about Mercy. With the referral program, that's amazing, because we've got people here who understand our values, who understand how we operate, and they're finding like-minded people that come in. And it's proven to be really a valuable source of finding people who might be right for this industry and right for Mercy.
Yeah, I really like that. And you were talking about JobLink there. Go back a second. You were talking about JobLink. Is that kind of job network services, government employment services, those kind of things as well? Is that kind of an avenue you've looked into?
Absolutely, yeah. Probably more. We end up. We do get a few from that employment providers down that from that avenue for some roles, but also with RTOs. So where people have partnered and they're getting their certificate threes, and we might engage them for placement, and then subsequent roles if they're suitable for the position.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. And that's, I guess that it's an interesting thing because we find it as well, even with our world, and not for staff, but even for new providers coming on, the amount of providers that are referred to us through other customers and connections within the sector. And I think it for us, it's in a way, it's a testament to the way that we work as an organisation, not to fluff ourselves up too much, but I'm interested to understand a little bit more around that team culture work. And I guess what kind of things, not with the recruitment lens necessarily, but with that people and culture elements. Like, are there initiatives that you do? Is there trips that you take? What kind of things are you doing as an organisation to create that culture across the group and create that great perception out there in the community?
Yeah.
Michelle, do you want to speak to that one?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it starts with just going to do a plug for the leadership, particularly our CEO. It starts with him recognising and acknowledging staff. So what I loved during COVID was he was doing like podcast talks, and he was sending out and speaking to the staff directly, and his calmness, but his gratitude. And it sounds so small, but gee, it was impactful because she felt like he was actually on your side and standing with you through what was a really challenging time. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's what I love about groups of this size. Sorry, Caitlyn, but groups of your size, you get that personal touch. It's not that the management team, there is across the sector, there's very much at times, you wouldn't call it adversarial by any means, but there is sometimes very much an us and them kind of, mentality across some all organisations, not just for community services. And when you have a close-knit team and you share that, the people, that kind of emotion behind things, it's why we're in this sector for a lot of the time. It is because we have an innate kind of connection to each other and the community, and sharing that across groups. I think it's such a great thing. But sorry, Caitlyn, you were going to...
No, you've actually touched on what I was going to link that in with. It's that community connection, and it's such a breadth of communication across our community. So I take great joy when we get contacted by local newspapers and things plugging, do you want to advertise in this? We don't do traditional advertising. We've got a very strong number of people calling us to sign up for packages, to all that sort of thing. That happens in such an organic way, and that's something that I'm incredibly proud of. We've, like I mentioned earlier, we've been around for decades, but that reputation is something that money can't buy, and that comes from the hard work of the staff that we've had for those decades as well. So people know how their aunt was treated. They know that their next door neighbour has the nurses come from Mercy Services and how happy they are with that service. And it is something that that then does feed through to our recruitment.
It's so nice to hear because, we get a hard run in the media. It's rare that you hear positive stories coming out of the sector. It's rare that you see positive stories on the news anyway, generally. But so I think it's nice. I think these kind of opportunities to share those stories, because 99% of the sector, from my experience, are doing great work and are so passionate about what they do. And I don't think there's enough of that gets put out into the community. It's only that when those stories of kind of sensational stories or conflict kind of get put out into the world. And it is, you guys have been around for so many years now, and that culture is something that you've nurtured over time. And it's just a really, really nice kind of testament to the work that you guys do as an organisation. And we as an organisation love working with your team as well. So it's a great element, I think, of what you guys are putting out into the community.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
So, please.
I was just going to say, I think it sounds cliche, but our clients are always front of mind. I think even for us who are in back office staff, like we sit in an office where there's a day centre, so we feel completely connected, and it's so lovely to see who we're servicing. And I think that things like that keep you very firmly aligned with why you're here and what you're doing. And I think that that's a really important aspect of people and culture, is that you understand who your actual client base is and the vulnerability of that group. It gives you a sort of added level of, I have to do this. And, we talk a lot about individuals who you might be the only person that they see that week, that day. And that's a real driving force for a lot of us. So I think from a people and culture standpoint, I think we lean a lot into our personal values and our morals and integrities, and caring for one another comes in that as well. So whilst we want exceptional care standards for our clients, I want to see exceptional care standards for our staff, and I want them to feel as much valued as our clients. That's not always possible, but as much as we can do to tell them how much we value what they do and the time and effort that they put in for others, I think it really helps them feel as valued as they should be.
Yeah, I think it's such a great point, and it's something that's getting more prevalence these days. But the impact that that gratitude has on team and that intrinsic value that we get from working in care services and community services, and just how powerful that is when we spend time, looking after the team, and just how important those people are. And obviously, the extension out into the customers and their families as well. It's just a very powerful thing to anchor on for groups out there. And it's a very nice kind of element. Anything else on that, Caitlyn, before we start digging into some more detail here?
No, I think it's very much like what Michelle said. It's about making sure staff feel heard and valued. And we've got some, I'll give a non-specific example. We had a staff member say to us, I think it was last year, I've got this idea for the staff gift. And when she disclosed the idea, it actually sounded a lot more like something that we should just be providing those staff, that segment of staff. And I said, look, that's a really good idea, but I don't think it's a staff gift. And so we took that idea, as Michelle said, we like to float a lot of ideas. We took that idea and said, look, this person said this, but we really think this is something we should be rolling out a bit wider, and certainly not as a gift. And sure enough, we rolled that out as we had a few concept stages, but it's that idea that staff feel heard and valued, and that when they say, this is what I need to be able to do my job better, or this would be nice to have, that we fully explore that, and where it's possible to roll it out, we do.
Yeah, I love that. And that's a really cool segue, I think, into the next part of the conversation, because enabling the communities, and you can put everyone under that, your back office teams, especially your support staff that are somewhat disconnected. Even the back office teams are disconnected. And a lot of the times, okay, when you're saying you're working from home at the moment, you guys have been impacted by the floods recently. And there's a lot of disconnection across the communities now, especially with the remote working uplift, and enabling initiatives, but also tools to allow for better connection and communication is really the backbone of. It's never going to replace the human elements of the sector, but if we can have tools and systems that enable connection and community, it gives you a place to be able to foster those relationships. So that's a nice little segue into the next topic that I wanted to talk with you both today, and I guess it's around, when we entered the sector about 7 years ago, Greg and I, the two co-founders, both of our families were going through home care at the time. So it was my grandfather was receiving home care services. He's now in a facility in Victoria. And my family was very kind of disconnected through geography. We were all different places all over the world. And so we were quite disconnected from the services that were being provided. And it was a really challenging time for us, just around knowing what was happening and wanting to be involved, but not wanting to cross that boundary of what was inappropriate, because, care services at times are a tricky thing to be able to kind of communicate and share with a wider family. Greg's family came from, his mother was one of 11 or 12 brothers and sisters, 3 of which were nurses, and they decided to self-manage the home care package. And you could imagine all of the complexities that came along with that. And so as we saw this problem for ourselves, and we kind of come from, contact center customer service backgrounds, I'm like, oh, hold on, there's an opportunity to fill this kind of communication gap. And as we dug into the problem of communication as a catch-all, we started to realize some very interesting practices, I guess you could say, that the providers were really considering, I think, business as usual. And just part of it, we kind of throw this concept around of calling is care, and groups are using these old kind of manual processes to enable that connection and community. And it's really driving huge amounts of inefficiency across the sector. Maybe, Caitlyn, you could share with us a little bit, without sharing all of the dirty laundry, so to speak, but, share a little bit around your world, prior to Hayylo, and kind of some of the challenges that you were faced with around communicating and connecting with the community.
Sure. The legacy of that real grassroots start and decades of that is that we hadn't had a whole lot of development in that sort of area of communicating with clients. It's still very letter-based. We would do a memo and print it out for our community care assistants to take to the next time they visit Mary and the next time they visit Ellen, which is great. It's face-to-face, but it's not necessarily timely. So if we needed to get very quick conversations happening, that would obviously require phone calls. And as you said, it's a very manual, it's very people heavy, having that sort of approach. Doesn't make it wrong, but it certainly wasn't the efficiency that we could use to grow. And that was our key. And it doesn't necessarily guarantee you good quality care either, is probably the other part of it. Just because you're on the phone with someone doesn't mean that you're actually getting that communication message across. It doesn't necessarily mean that the right people are doing the talking. There's all those elements at play as well. So we did have very manual processes, and not that anyone complained about those, but it wasn't like we could be responsive to a flood situation without having everyone on phone calls.
I think that's one of the silver linings of the last couple of years, as well as, it's spoken about a lot in the sector at the moment. Again, adversity and challenge creates diamonds a lot of the time. And as much as it's been a hard time, it has enabled better technology implementation across the sector. It's enabled a lot of the community to gains, technology, so smartphones and devices and things like that, to be able to connect in new ways. And also just a general acceptance of things like SMS, over email and over letters, and those kind of things that we've seen change over the last few years that have been really impactful for groups' abilities to kind of lift and shift the way they've done things for so long. Because I think what we found was that those communication strategies, still now, and we'll dig into some numbers a little bit later, but the impact that's having on groups is huge, and there's some amazing optimizations that can be found quite quickly through that. And I think traditionally, really, the focus has been, and rightly so, on the CMS and scheduling platforms within the sector. And maybe you can give us a little bit of an understanding. Hayylo, for the audience, if they don't know by now, we're a care service platform, and we're really the only service platform that's purpose-built for care, which is enabling teams to be able to work through all of the inquiries that come through and then communicate through different channels of communication. But you went through recently a CMS changeover, I think in the midst of the pandemic, which is an interesting time. I don't think you would have planned that one before, but could you give us a little bit of an insight into that project and the reason why you decided to make that change, and maybe some of the things that you learned throughout that process?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd been with our previous CMS, I think for 7 years, may have been a little bit longer. We went to market, did more than our fair share of demos just to see what was out there and what functionality, again, would just bring us forward. So we just really wanted something that was forward thinking and just allowed us the ability to grow. But one of the things that I think was most important to us was to let us start with a clean slate. There's a lot that can be said for bad habits that come with using the same system for a number of years. You could have 4 different people having 4 different approaches, getting to the same destination, but some of them are a little bit more efficient than others. So the clean slate was really important. And in this challenge of, particularly the pandemic highlighted, if you've got 20% of your workforce off suddenly because there's been a COVID outbreak or something's happened, we need to be able to re-roster those shifts really quickly. So for us, those sorts of responsivity issues may not have been as high on the agenda 4 or 5 years ago as they have been in the last couple of years with issues of lockdowns and the like. So we really needed to go back out and make sure we picked the right CMS. That took some time, and it's not something that anyone can rush. We did a lot of work at the back end to make sure that we had all of our data right, because again, the legacy of years and years of data is that people do entry differently. All those sorts of things come into play. So it was a real, it was a lengthy process. But the issue, I think, was, like you said, we did end up still rolling it out in a pandemic, because this pandemic isn't going anywhere anytime soon at the moment.
Yeah.
And we did a little bit of soul searching right at the end of UAT about, do we do it this month or do we push it? And to be really honest, when we thought about it, next month was going to be just as bad. And we would have done all this work and then had to try and manage 2 systems so that we could push the button next month. So we did end up just, had a discussion as a team, what was the way forward, and it was that the right answer is to do it the best of our ability at the time that we had planned to, and that's exactly what we did. And look, I'm not going to say it was easy, but no one stormed out, there weren't any tears or anything like that. It was genuinely a positive process for us. So and very quickly we started to see some efficiencies that we hadn't seen before. And what we were really grateful for was the ability to have that, for a little shameless plug of the Hayylo platform, but to know we had the consistency from the client facing in particular, so that clients, they saw the same interface regardless. So no matter what CMS was, we brought you guys into the conversation really early that we wanted the integration to switch over the moment we needed it to, so that clients were still seeing their schedule, were still able to contact us, and that there wasn't any undue delay in that. Although we had sent a letter, because for us, there's a difference between the things that you can say in a letter or an email, that length, versus what you can do in a text. And we were really honest with our client base around, this is what's happening for us. We are going to have some, minor teething pains. There might be challenges. Please feel free to reach out if you've got any concerns. And yes, there may be some minor interruptions with our app. But again, we were as upfront and as forward planning as we could conceivably be to make sure that our clients were not adversely affected or surprised. We wanted them to know that what we were doing was to gain better efficiencies so that they could get better care.
That's what I love about our tech, and this is one thing we share with a lot of providers, because the CMS and scheduling changeovers, they are big projects. They are fundamental core of how you operate, how you schedule services, how you report back to the government, all those kind of things. And they take time, and they take, as you're saying, there's a lot of pre-work that has to go into it around your data sets and all those kind of things. And tools like ours and others out there in the world, we have an implementation time now. I think it's 4 to 8 weeks that we spin up and integrate, and that's with a real-time integration. And as you said, we're able to lift and shift that from one platform to another in a matter of weeks or days, depending on the complexity of that. But as you're saying, being able to keep that customer experience consistent across those kind of fundamental core changes for an organization is a really powerful thing. And I was having a conversation with another group out of South Australia recently, and they're going through it the same as what you guys are doing. They're not a Hayylo customer yet, but we're talking about the fact of, look, you're going to spend the next 12 months, 18 months going through the market scan and then doing your background work, and then and you will get those gains in 12 months, 2 years. But by putting a tool like Hayylo in place before that, you're able to gain optimization, which we'll get into in a second, but also be able to then make those changes in the background whilst knowing that kind of customer experience and that service level is maintained. And I think it's an exciting thing about some of these new breed tools that are coming in, because the complexities of the CMSs are huge. You know, what you guys have to deal with the ongoing reforms and the changes. It's a constant struggle for CMS platforms to keep updated to what's going on, and for you guys to be able to operate those environments as well.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So where one of the things, I guess, you know, what I kind of wanted to get into a little bit around, I guess, is the impact of that changeover and some of the things that you guys are seeing. I do have a report here that I don't know if it's been shared with you guys yet, but it will be shared with you guys shortly. But it shows some of the kind of optimizations, and just to give people a little bit of an overview as well, there's kind of 3 core things that we do at Hayylo. There's a lot that we can do, but there's really 3 things that we kind of focus on. And the first one is enabling your team to be able to work through a centralized ticketing system. We call it a service desk. It's a place for all of the inquiries across the app, SMS, email, phone, whatever it might be, that all land into a centralized place for groups to be able to stay on top of the work that kind of happens day to day. We then move into a world of what we call proactive communication, which is starting to let people know around service changes. And I'm going to share some stats, because the velocity of change happening across the sector at the moment is absolutely wild. It's the amount of service changes, because the staffing impacts are just huge, and it's not you guys alone. It's just everybody at the moment. And then the final step is self-service. And self-service, we call it the holy grail. The more that we can enable information to the community so they can access it the way they like, on the channels that they like, one, creates a better service experience for them, but it also creates huge optimizations for you guys as well. And we'll dig into some stats as we kind of go along with this, but what kind of impact has it had on your team? And what kind of things have you seen kind of change, I guess, you know, since deploying Hayylo out into your world?
Sure. I think it really has empowered our rostering team in particular to be able to not only see the volume of requests that come through, because some days I can only imagine some days how the rosterers feel at the end of it, with the sheer volume of changes that come through. And then it might not feel like they didn't get anything done, because it was just managing the wave of requests that come through. So I think for them to be able to see trends, the quantification of exactly how much has changed, how many requests how many tickets have come through, it just, I think the mind boggles. But it before that, it was just a flurry of phone calls. It wasn't something that they could look back on and review. It wasn't something that they could recognize the trends. But they've also got the ability then to not be on the phone all the time. When clients can self-serve, when family members can self-serve and say, look, we need this, that's huge, that we don't have to have that phone call and we can just make that change when it comes through. Obviously, sometimes we need more information, we'll make that call, but it does just streamline the processes in a way that is phenomenal. So we've seen our rostering team, I think we have to really pry it out of their hands if we ever went away from this approach, because it has had such a dramatic impact on allowing them to make better decisions for their workforce as well. When people had to work from home, some people have to work remotely, but they can still be part of the same triage, for lack of a better term, around I need to do these ones, or I'm doing this team today. And it doesn't have to be in the office, someone calling out over the desk what someone else is going to be doing.
That's a really interesting one as well, because that's what we talk about. We call it focus mode, because up until these type of technologies started emerging in the sector, a lot of groups didn't even know about the volume of calls they were getting or the cost of to the team to manage. One of the interesting things is when the call comes in, how do I prioritize that inquiry? How do I know it's a service for now or later? And a lot of the time it's added onto an Excel sheet somewhere, and then there's a call off that has to happen, or you've got to build a manual process around the schedulers. they're the unsung heroes in care. I'm just going to throw it out there. Out of all the back office positions, out of all the positions in the sector, and I've spent a lot of time with scheduling teams over the years that we've been in with Hayylo, and they're a different creature. That what they have to deal with a lot of the time, that management of the inquiry, but also enabling them to be able to work through that. Yeah. And just to give people a little bit of an understanding, I'm going to share some stats from your world. And so across the last 30 days, there was around about 345 clients scheduled visits worked on over that time. This is where it gets wild. There was close to 3,000 notifications sent out of Hayylo for those changes. So it's like averaging nearly 10 changes per service or per client across the 30 days. That is an inordinate amount of change for anyone to be working through and processing. And the plug on Hayylo there is that I think it works out to around about 140 hours of savings of hours saved on that one element in the platform over that time. So you can see the optimization that starts to come by that proactive comms, by being able to, not always, you're never going to replace the calling is care concept. You'll never replace the human element of it. But if we can just, alleviate the pressure a little bit, we talk about it as turning down the noise, just giving people a little bit more time to focus on, optimizing the way they schedule and communicating through channels that are now, received. I think we're seeing something like a 70% utilization or adoption rate of SMS notification channels for when services change. But it is a massive amount of flux that happens across the sector. And up until recently, it's been something that's just been part of doing business, part of doing care. So it's really exciting to see some of these new types of impacts that are coming through. And as you were saying as well, like it's also been able to see the types of inquiries you're getting and really to get a snapshot of your operations. So you can start to make decisions on how to make that more efficient as well. Does that make sense to you, those numbers?
Oh, it really does. And like you said, it allows us to adjust business processes to be more responsive to what the trends are. But more importantly as well, it allows the rostering team, like you said, our unsung heroes of the sector, they get to have those more meaningful conversations because they're not just putting out fires constantly. They can have have more time to forward plan, to better roster, really look at things big picture, because the minutiae detail is being taken care of. The things that can be taken care of by the system are being taken care of, so they can use their brain for other purposes. One of the huge undertakings in the CMS changeover was actually getting the rosterers to think about the things that are second nature to them, that they know that Mary only likes Sue, Joan and Ruth to do their service, no one else. So, but they know that in their head, and they know Mary and they know exactly what she likes. But it even though it was formed up in so many words in the CMS, it wasn't necessarily done in a way that was logical for the CMS to be able to make those logical decisions. So letting them download that information out of their head that to them is just normalized in their day-to-day, so that they can then have that bigger picture thinking on any given day, to forward plan, to have those bigger discussions, is so important to us, because that again lets us lean into that exceptional care.
And where are you? It's a very interesting topic that you just brought up there. So at the very, very beginning of the Hayylo journey, I found myself on the road with a home care worker. And we were going around to clients, and I was just spending time with them, and I spent a little bit of time in the office, and there's a lady by the name of Jenny, and they said, "Oh, Jenny's not in today." And I said, "Oh, what is that? What's the problem?" Well, Jenny knows everything. She knows what everyone wants and likes, and who's going to work with who and who isn't going to work with who. And I'm like, wow, that's wild. So it's like this one person holds the keys to the operation in the back office. It's very risky for me. What is that information now put somewhere that the team is able to access and understand? How does that process work for you?
Yeah, well, that was it. It was an ongoing process, because we thought we'd have it. We look at the roster and they go, no, that one doesn't work. And so I go, okay, what doesn't work about it? So that we could then work out what that rule needed to be built in. but we like to call that Powerball proofing. Some people talk about being hit by a bus. I'd rather think if someone wins Powerball, that the wheels don't fall off. So if they're not going to come to work tomorrow for whatever reason, the wheels don't fall off. The Jenny, that from your example, she doesn't have to drag herself to a computer if she's feeling horrendously unwell, but she knows in herself that the core information is there and she's still valued. There's never going to be a time where the Jennies of the world are not valued, because they will be always valued. They've always got something to bring. Yeah,
that's always,
they can use their talents for that bigger picture thinking than they are when they're just, no, you can't put that person with that person. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I love that as well, because I think that's one, and going back to this kind of team and culture stuff that we've been talking about, having those super users, those experienced staff, being able to coach and mentor and help other teams as well. That's what those people should be doing. That knowledge that they've got shouldn't be used to re-roster and reschedule things. It should be used to empower other team members, to upskill everybody, because we know we have this kind of skill issue within the sector. That transfer of knowledge is a really hard thing to and that's really that I love how you put it. We talk about it as well, putting out the fires. Mel and Kong from Innovating and I had a conversation about scarcity mindset across the sector, and how essentially that the sector, because of putting out the fires, that we're in this reactionary mode constantly. And because of that reactionary mode, we're not able to make decisions properly. It literally changes the way that we think, and we can't forward plan, and we can't make better decisions. And this is having massive impacts on the sector. And as you said, it's compounded over 10, 20, 30 years of fires that we've been putting out. And if we can just get ahead a little bit and just turn down the noise a little bit, we can create a better culture, a better environment, and it's going to have all of these downstream effects on not just your operating costs, but your retention and attrition and all of these other things that are impacting the sector at the moment. Yeah. Before we kind of close off on that, what about the customers and the families? Are you getting? Is there a change? How's the adoption of it been? Are people receptive to these kind of new ways of communication? Was there much pushback? How's the community taking it on board?
We get a little bit of both. There's the people that will always want a phone call, and there is no amount of intelligent technology that's ever going to change that. No. But I think as the sector changes, as needs change, and obviously as generations move through as well, it will become the norm to have these sorts of processes in place. Families are often very engaged in a family member's care. It's not always, but the opportunity does need to be there to allow families to engage. Obviously, when the client chooses to as well, and that's something that we've always come back to, is it might be okay to know that dad needs home care, but he doesn't want you to know the minutiae detail of the services he gets. Whereas other parents would hope that their child can help reschedule their nursing, or it needs to be reflective and responsive to people's needs and to the individual. And I think that's what that customization is really, really core in the systems that we roll out. There's no one size fits all. So they are very happy. The ones that we speak to are really excited about it. They're the first ones to tell us if something's not working, or why is this in my schedule, or something like that. But it has been an enormous uptake for us.
But we want that feedback. Like, we want to know that live real-time feedback enables us to make better decisions very quickly. And again, it will help, with all of those elements across the organization. And, I remember when we first started this journey, there was such a pushback to opening up the door and allowing feedback. There's been voice of customer surveys that go out once a year, and then we might touch base again in 6 months. And, to be able to get that live and respond in real time is a really, really powerful kind of element of what, these kind of technologies and communication channels can do. So, Michelle, have you seen an impact on the team generally, high level, with these kind of changes across the sector in general, but also with tools like Hayylo?
Yeah, I think the phrase you use, "turn down the noise," is probably the most poignant thing I've taken away, because I think you know, the chatter, oh, we've missed this, or where's this, or what's that? A lot of that's died down, and you don't hear some of the stress and complexities of what's going on. It's still there, but it seems to have a solution in place, where in the past it was like, what are we going to do? And there was a lot of that conversation that would be fed, that I would hear, is that kind of, this isn't working, this isn't working. You don't hear that so much anymore, which is good. It's positive. And that means that then you are getting more cohesive teams. So in the home and community care space, we've got pods of teams that really need to operate very, very cohesively together, plus a whole group of individuals who are never in the office, who are out there servicing, who need things done for, you know, efficiently for them, who need to be contacted quickly and because they're out on the road. And so I think you can certainly see that there has been improvements there. It's been a process to work through, but I feel like we're getting there. So
yeah, all change is like that inter-team communication. Again, it's another. These like for us, you know, the learning curve for us as we've come into the sector, and you know, we're approaching 10 years now, so we're kind of veterans at this point. But you know, but that concept of inter-team communication and the amount of resources it takes for someone, you know, the water cooler conversation to get up and say, hey, how does this work, or what do I do in this situation, or what are we going to do here, and these things have just been this standard operating procedure for the sector for so long, and it is amazing to see what the kind of impacts and optimization that can bring when you're, you know, enabling collaboration, enabling you know, the teams to be able to share information quickly, share information out to the community quickly, and the effects that has on the community. It's a really good point. It's a really cool thing.
The other thing I thought I'd mention, just from a different standpoint, is the client. So we talk a lot about optimizations and using technology, but we do have a client base that are not as tech savvy as other generations are. And coming back to the original conversation around Mercy Helpers, part of their role was to support clients with learning the tech skills. So we'd have them go out. I think during COVID, on occasion, we'd have them go out and just set up a Zoom, you know, with their grandkids, so that they could see them, or just help them with that technology piece. So we haven't forgotten about that. And as Caitlyn said, we understand that we're in the industry of people, and we have to do very individualised focus, and personalised care is what it's known by. So I like that we've been able to kind of consider that as well with our recruitment and the roles that we bring in as well.
I loved that when Caitlyn shared that with me. I loved that concept, that, you know, using the youth, you know, enabling that to change that culture. And as you said, it's a person-centered sector. You know, we're never going to replace that. What we're trying to enable is better connections, better opportunities for human connection. And, you know, by alleviating some of the pressure and some of the stress, we create space. We create better spaces for people to connect. Awesome. Really exciting to hear this kind of stuff from you guys. I've been looking forward to this conversation for ages, and we've been at it for nearly an hour now. So I'm going to wrap it up with one other question to you both. As we look into the future, and as we've looked kind of at the last 2 years and the impact that's had on your team, what are you focused on now? You've done your CMS transfer, you've got Hayylo in there, optimizing and humming away. And what is the focus now for Mercy Services in both of your two roles? Caitlyn, you can start maybe if you like.
Sure. We will continue hammering away at integrating the systems that we've rolled out to make sure that there is as little double up as possible, which is often a challenge, particularly when we have got such a diverse workforce. There can be systems that do this but not that. But also allowing staff to continue to self-service their training, their pay slips, all those sorts of things that allow someone to remain as remote and engaged with their client as possible. So one of the core values that we come back to when we look at projects is this going to help a staff member be more engaged in that care, in that moment, in that person's home? They might be the only person that they see in any given day, or it might be the bus driver is the only person they speak to and from their appointments. making sure that we're not getting in the way of them being able to provide good quality care is the most important piece for us. So it will be projects and people focused projects at that, to make sure that we're not getting in the way of the people doing the great things that they do.
Amazing. Love it. Love it. And for yourself, Michelle, to finish us off for the day.
Yeah, sure. So similar to, I think, how you identified a gap in the industry, I think a focus now is, in my area, is to become probably more strategic in thinking, or I'm working on being strategic in thinking about what our recruitment plan looks like, and identifying where the gaps are in that nursing space and utilising those to create unique opportunities that create career planning and longevity in the workforce that they can utilise. So, you know, thinking what you can do with a Mercy helper and how far you can take that, and considering what we need in this space. And I've already started, and I think that it's exciting what we might be able to offer in the years to come, if we get that right gap analysis checks done and we find that right unique platform moving forward with our recruitment.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I know you guys are very busy people and you do amazing work for the community, and we're very proud to have you guys as part of our family here at Hayylo. And I just wanted to thank you both for your service to the community and for spending a little bit of time with me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.